Let's just get one thing out of the way, okay? It's Pride Month. And do you know what that means? This is a double shot. This is It means we're here, we're queer, and that apparently I can take shots on camera if I want to. But I also reserve the right to look as crazy as I'd like to on camera, and I fully intend to do so. So drink it all in, I'm probably gonna be especially annoying this month. First, before we dive into things, I just need to shout out some stuff down below right off the bat. We're still crowdfunding for my short film, so that GoFundMe will be linked down below. There's also plenty of updated resources. Of course, we have some LGBTQ+ themed ones, as well as some GoFundMes for the recent tragedy that happened in Texas that we're not going to get into today. Because today there is quite a lot to talk about. As you saw by the title, I'll be talking about every single movie that I watched in the month of May. There were a surprising amount of horror releases in the month of May, like Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Men, Firestarter, Season 4 of Stranger Things, so many more. Let me just quickly list off some of the non-horror stuff that I watched, because I'm not going to dwell on that. We have the Fantastic Beasts trilogy, including The Secrets of Dumbledore, and all I will say is that this newest movie could have been an email. What happened? Why have they dug themselves into this hole of having to shoehorn the beasts into every plot line? I saw it so you don't have to. Fuck JK Rowling. The end. Goodbye. I also rewatched quite a few movies in the month of May. I watched the original and the remake of Child's Play for my Child's Play comparison video, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. There's always a lot of fun behind the scenes info and some sassy dialogue from yours truly in those videos. I also rewatched Child's Play 2 because, iconic, best of the franchise, a masterpiece. I also rewatched Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and honestly, that movie gets worse every single time that I watch it, but I'll never stop. As time passes after I rewatch the movie, the only thing that I seem to remember about it is the fact that the monsters look so amazing. The movie is also dripping in style, so then I get to thinking, and I'm like, yeah, I should definitely rewatch that movie again. And every single time without fail, I'm like, oh yeah, damn, the story sucks. Why didn't they just make a true anthology? Whatever. Apparently a sequel is still in the works as well, with Guillermo del Toro producing again. So I hope they make some improvements, but I don't generally have hope for a sequel. Last year when I watched it, I still gave it 3.5 stars for some reason. This time when I watched it, I was like, yeah, 2.5. It's not good. But yet, I still foresee myself rewatching it over and over and over because I just love those original books so goddamn much. I rewatched the SpongeBob SquarePants movie because I was with my OG best friend. It's insane that I have been best friends with this girl since I was 4 years old, and it turns out that adulthood is the same as childhood. We're still watching SpongeBob, but now we're just doing it high. We're all goofy goobers. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't, etc., etc. I also rewatched Back to the Future at another Cinespia event. It was so rad. They had a few DeLoreans there and everything, and I think that the guys that own them were genuinely just fans of the franchise, and so they actually bought the cars and the memorabilia. They had the hoverboard, the almanac, a ton of really cool props. So of course, I took some pictures with it, 10 out of 10. It's a perfect movie. We can move on because I also had 2 theater rewatches this month as well. I went to see The Northman and Everything Everywhere All at Once for the 2nd time each. Both damn near perfect movies. Adore them. Also, go support them and see them in the theater if you haven't already. You definitely want to watch them in a theater setting, I promise. I also rewatched the first 2 Conjuring movies because I've been looking for inspiration for my new upcoming short Somnum. Again, link in the description box if you want to donate. And they're great classics, especially the second one. Speaking of getting inspiration though, I finally watched The Babadook all the way through for the first time, and woo! A single mother plagued by the violent death of her husband battles with her son's fear of a monster lurking in the house, but soon discovers a sinister presence all around her. This movie inspired me in all types of ways. I finally found out what Tara was on about in Scream 5. I get it now. That movie is so fucking good. I was shocked. Essie Davis is incredible, and when I tell you that woman displays the entire spectrum of human emotion, I mean that. It's exactly what Tara says. It's an amazing meditation on grief and motherhood. Like, yes, speak on it, Tara. I was especially inspired by the lighting, though. It's giving noir. It's giving parallel dimension. That's the level of style that I want to achieve in the stuff that I make. I love a heavily stylized stylized film. I don't care if it feels realistic. And yes, the kid is insufferable, but he has to be. It has to be this way. I don't know what to tell you. Grief ripples outwards. It manifests in a plethora of ways. Let this movie speak its truth. If it wants to give us the most annoying child in all of cinema, let it be so. I know that I'm a little late to this party, but I tried to watch it back in 2015 when I was only 16 years old, so I didn't get it back then. My frontal lobe was truly that of a child. Now, at the prehistoric age of 22, almost 23, though my birthday is July 6th, you should put that in your calendar, I empathize with the situation. I feel the pain and the anguish of this pair. Kind of a spoiler, but the fact that her grief manifests as this giant monster in a top hat that she keeps in her basement and feeds worms to? Relatable. It is the weirdest metaphorical representation of grief that I've ever seen, and yet it makes the most sense. If you haven't seen it, watch The Babadook. I find it to be a stunning achievement in filmmaking, personally. Oh my god, I forgot to mention, I listed Choose or Die on my Letterboxd, but I did not finish that movie. Just boo, stinky, boring, such a waste of Asa Butterfield, honestly. Netflix, get it together. Another first-time watch for me would be Serial Mom, which came out back in the 90s. She's the perfect all-American parent, a great cook and homemaker, a devoted recycler, and a woman who will literally kill to keep her children happy. This movie was okay in my opinion. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Matthew Lillard in a little ponytail, yes, we love that. Also, I watched this movie because I was making my list of top 30 most iconic moms in horror movies, so watch that video as well if you haven't. But I wish I liked this movie. Initially, I did find it to be super funny. They have this housewife back in the 50s or whatever, and she loves to make obscene phone calls, which I found hilarious. But as it progressed, the movie got so lame. The most fun part of it was this character, this mother, who was killing anybody that made her family unhappy. But then all the fun was sucked out of it because the whole town pretty much immediately found out that it was her doing it, and then the entire last act of the movie takes place in the courthouse. Like, can I go home? Which is weird in my opinion. At one point also in the trial, she's like flashing her palace doors to the witness on the stand. And at that point, I'm like, okay, what are we doing here? Moving on, very exciting. Up next we have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Dr. Stephen Strange casts a forbidden spell that opens a portal to the multiverse. However, a threat emerges that may be too big for his team to handle. I spoke about this at length on Patreon, by the way, that is also linked down below, $5 a month for bonus content. But the horror elements of this movie are the best part of it by far. It's not even funny. These actors' talents are being wasted, okay? Even Elizabeth Olsen in interviews has said she feels like she's missing out on roles that feel more true to her because of her commitments to Marvel. They need to be in horror movies. This woman needs to be in horror movies. I am so serious. As a victim or a villain, Elizabeth Olsen is incredible in horror scenes. There's also been a bit of an uproar about how this PG-13 movie is too violent and gory. Grow up. Grow up. I don't have time for that. The blend of horror with the action was also very unexpected and amazing. Thank you, Sam Raimi. Some moments were genuine horror, very suspenseful, very dark, and some moments were just camp. I saw this meme too of Sam Raimi coming through with a Trojan horse disguising Evil Dead 4 as the Multiverse of Madness, and we love that. It's clear to me that as messy as this movie was, the people that made it seemed to be having the time of their life. The musical note scene as well. Cinema. And usually one of my favorite parts of Marvel movies is the cameos. There is one really excellent one in the Multiverse of Madness, and if you're a horror fan, you probably know who I'm talking about. But oddly, the cameos were one of the worst parts of Doctor Strange. I also saw Jennifer Vega point this out in her Letterboxd review. If you've seen What If, which is arguably the best show that Marvel has ever made, and I will not be accepting alternate opinions on that, then you would get a couple of the really cool references within the cameos of Doctor Strange. But some of the cameos are downright lame, and it's like, okay, what are you doing here? At some point, they're gonna run out of actors to give goofy cameos because everyone is trying to get their Marvel bag right now. Jeez, look at me being messy today. Everybody relax. They should let Sam Raimi make more Marvel movies. It might scare some of the normies and the regularites out of the theaters, but we would get better movies, and it might knock Disney's monopoly down a peg. To be honest though, this movie wasn't great. It's very clear to me that it was pretty rushed. I think they hired Sam Raimi pretty last minute, so not his fault. But it was very entertaining. This movie was a lot of fun. They just needed to get from point A to point B in the grander scheme of whatever phase 4 of Marvel is doing. So Sam Raimi just said, he understood all the filler didn't really matter, so he ran with it, you understand? Anyway, up next would be Our Father. Oh, this fucked me up. Oh, here we go. Our Father is a documentary on Netflix that chronicles the crimes of a fertility doctor who impregnated his patients with his own sperm. Yes, I'm not giving you any more details than that. This documentary kept getting worse and worse until the final title card. It left me feeling terrible, and I will never see a male fertility doctor as long as I live. You can count on that much. It was the #1 documentary on Netflix for like a day, and I can see why. It's so morbid, you almost just feel inclined to watch it to see if it is as fucked up as it sounds. And oh, shocker, it is. I don't know if I recommend it. It's a lot to process. I think that the topics that it brings up, it's an important conversation to have right now, given that women might lose their bodily autonomy on a federal level soon. So there's that, but also the documentary might ruin your whole day, so I'm gonna move on, okay? Up next we have Firestarter, the new Blumhouse Peacock remake of the Stephen King classic. Firestarter follows a family with various powers as they are tracked down by the agency that created them. But this time it stars Zac Efron. I got some annoying ass comments saying that, oh, this man should stay out of movies, blah blah blah. And those comments were only from men, okay? I think that some men genuinely just have a problem with other men that women see as sex symbols. Or they just have problems with anything that was once loved or is loved widely by women. For example, Robert Pattinson is finally being respected as an actor because he was cast in a dark superhero movie, and surprise, surprise, he was amazing in it. So many people just wrote him off even though he wasn't the problem with Twilight. Same thing with Zac Efron. Oh, he's the pretty boy from High School Musical. He's the one that wants to play basketball and sing. Again, the problem with a lot of his movies is the movies. He is a very talented man. Now, I'll be honest, I thought he looked like too much of a daddy to be playing a father. But I really believed him, and the young girl that was playing Charlie was amazing as well. I also saw the cutest thing. Drew Barrymore, like, has her own talk show still. Completely forgot about that. But the young girl that played Charlie came on the show, and as soon as they met each other, they hugged, and then they were like, oh my god, you're amazing. They both burst into tears.
I'm not able to keep it together. I'm so happy to meet you. I watched the film and it's so good. You're so good at it.
Just so cute. Like, get out of town. They had no business elevating the script to the level that they did, but even so, the acting could not save this movie. It's so poorly made, like, honestly and truly, what the hell is going on with the lighting? I couldn't see the movie. It looked so terrible. Everything about this movie, too, just looked so rushed. Even the score, done by John Carpenter, mind you. I am almost 200% certain that he just pulled out a Halloween Kills sample and threw it at this movie. It is almost indistinguishable from a Halloween score. This movie is just poorly made, it doesn't have great pacing, and it's also just so generic. You never even get a sense of why the villains are doing what they're doing. So save your time and money. I don't even think that it's in theaters anymore. It's a movie that will be forgotten in time, so let's move on. Closed is also on Letterboxd, so go rate it if you haven't already. But also, if you don't know what it is, Closed is my creature acting debut, and it follows Jackie as she closes up a coffee shop for the night when she realizes she may not be alone. I also produced a behind-the-scenes documentary about Closed because acting on it was just a lot of fun, got some great interviews in that as well, and hopefully that's linked down below. It is free to watch on my channel. Up next, unfortunately, we have Men. I truly do not even want to get started on this again. In the aftermath of a personal tragedy, Harper retreats alone to the beautiful English countryside, hoping to find a place to heal. However, someone or something from the surrounding woods appears to be stalking her. I had a really strong reaction of just hatred to this movie at first. The lead is as deep as a puddle, okay? She's just traumatized. It's her only personality trait, and they'll remind you of that in every single scene. That seemed to be the only necessary human trait that Alex Garland wanted to give her. No personality, no likes or dislikes, no fleshed out relationships. Just woman. just sad, traumatized woman. And fuck that. I said on Letterboxd, women are more than their trauma. It also annoys me because a woman shouldn't have to be traumatized. Like, that shouldn't be her only personality trait to get people to sympathize with her. So that's kind of why I take issue with the constant reminder of that in this movie, and the pure neglect of giving her any other character traits. It's just trauma porn. This is, I think, the third of Alex Garland's movies where he has a traumatized female lead, and genuinely some men do get off on that. Do something else. Make her a full human being at the bare minimum, right? But it seemed to have a very clear message that all men are the same. They beat you over the head with this via the imagery and all the dialogue of the movie. But also at the same time, there is a very different perspective that people have taken with the messaging of the movie. I watched the review that Sarah Hawkinson and her boyfriend did, and it kind of shifted my perspective a little bit. Some people think that it's not about telling a woman's story at all, and that it's only about this folk creature, god, or whatever. So, okay. Fine. Riddle me why the movie is called Men. Riddle me why it was marketed as a feminist movie about a woman dealing with her trauma surrounding her terrible experiences with men. I felt like one could assume that it would be a very cathartic and relatable experience as a woman watching the movie. Wrong. Yeah, this movie said all men are the same, all men are shitty, and women deserve better, etc., etc., but that was all it did. There was nothing constructive about it. It's like, we know, thanks, so what about it? I don't get the feeling that men will watch this film and think, oh yeah, I should do better. Especially because there wasn't really any subtlety to the movie. There are a lot of microaggressions that women experience that I don't feel were explored. And also maybe if they had humanized Harper a little bit and gave her a bit more of a personality to latch onto, then people would kind of better understand that message. But no, she was just a traumatized damsel in distress, and unfortunately that is how a lot of men view women. And I don't really want to give the movie the credit that, like, oh, maybe that was intentional, maybe they're making commentary on that, because there were no women writing, producing, directing, etc. If any women consulted on this script, it was not mentioned in the credits. Maybe if literally just the title had been different, I would feel differently. I wouldn't feel quite as strongly. But I still maintain all my other opinions about the movie. Like, the female lead should have been more fleshed out. She should have been a better, more well-rounded character. And also the last act of the movie, it completely falls apart, and there is nothing else that can be said about that. You can geek out about how gorgeous the movie is, how well acted it was, etc., but it still sucks. I ranted for like 12 minutes straight on my Patreon about it, so again, that's linked down below, but let's move on to The Black Phone. I watched this at an early screening, so I'll save all my thoughts for now, just gonna give you the bare minimum. I will say it's a good movie and you should go see it. Nothing revolutionary, but it is a lot of fun, it's very well acted, and just very entertaining. The next new release I saw was The Bad Guys, which I won't dwell on because it's not horror, but I do have a few thoughts. After a lifetime of legendary heists, notorious criminals Mr. Wolf, Mr. Snake, Mr. Piranha, Mr. Shark, and Mrs. Tarantula are finally caught. To avoid a prison sentence, the animal outlaws must pull off their most challenging con yet, becoming model citizens. This movie is so good. 4.5 stars. I'm in love. The animation is gorgeous, you guys. Such an incredible stride in filmmaking. I was having the time of my life with this movie. Very predictable but great heist movie with super lovable characters. And it has a really sweet message about being good because it feels good. Go see this movie if you have kids, they're gonna love it, you're gonna love it, even if you don't have kids, who cares? Up next, another horror movie would be The Twin, which is a Shudder original. Following the aftermath of a tragic accident that claimed the life of one of their twins, a couple moves out to the countryside. However, Rachel soon begins to unravel the truth about malicious forces trying to take hold of her surviving son. I will keep it 100 with you, I did not finish this movie. I lasted almost a full hour into this movie, and when I saw that there were 48 minutes left, I said no way. After that hour had passed, almost nothing of importance had happened in the movie yet. It was also getting ridiculously predictable, very Walmart version of Midsommar, but Midsommar with a mixture of, oh, something is wrong with the child. I wonder what it could be. In this movie, the son starts to believe that he is his his dead twin, and so he starts to sleep in his brother's bed and playing with his toys and throwing fits about it, wanting to be called by the right name. And in another movie or in other filmmaking hands, that sounds like a great concept. But unfortunately, the twin is one of the most boring things I've ever seen. And I'm a fan of Teresa Palmer, come through lights out, warm bodies queen. And she does her best. She does her best in this movie, but there's just no fixing it. The one thing I could think of is maybe the editing is just not, you know, quick enough. Something is weird about the pacing. It's so slow, which I think makes the whole movie seem worse than it maybe actually is. But I couldn't really put my finger on it. The whole thing is just completely flavorless. But moving on to the very last movie that I watched this month, that would be Ginger Snaps, the iconic werewolf coming-of-age movie from 2000. Ginger and Bridget are two outcast sisters battling their way through high school until Ginger is bit by a werewolf. Navigating her body's transformation proves difficult, and it's up to Bridget to try to save her. I wanted to like it, I really did. I gave it 3 stars because there was a lot that this movie was doing well. I love the metaphor of the werewolf and how it coincides with Ginger getting her first period. It's an amazing metaphor for coming into womanhood because it sucks. You get hairier, you get your first period, which makes it feel like your back is breaking and you're about to give birth to this giant balloon that's just sitting right on top of your bladder. Your skin goes to shit, your hair gets greasier way more often, you can't control all these emotions, etc., etc. So the werewolf is honestly and truly the perfect metaphor. There are also some great practical effects, good makeup. I think Katharine Isabelle kills it in that role, but I still didn't like the movie. It is otherwise not very well made, which I just found to be really distracting. It's also very long, which I didn't totally feel like was earned. Again, it's another one that it's kind of hard to put my finger on, something just kind of fell off. But by all accounts, I should have loved it, and the same can be said for Jennifer's Body. Both very well-intentioned feminist movies, and I didn't like either of them. Is it meant to oomness? It's meant to illness, isn't it? So yeah, I think it's an important movie. You should watch it, but I can't guarantee that you're gonna like it. Unfortunately, that is also where I leave you today, but I just real quick have to thank these lovely people. Again, if you'd like to hear me rant about men a little bit more in depth, or hear me talk about the Multiverse of Madness some more, my Patreon is listed down below. These are all my lovely patrons. You get quite a bit of bonus content, but it really is just about supporting me at the end of the day. Other ways you can support me are, of course, donating to my upcoming short film project. That would mean a lot. Everything that you need should be linked down below, but more than anything, I just hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope I catch you in the next one. Bye!